My afternoon in LaForche. A couple years back, I was doing some business down in Bayou country over to LaForche. So I took care of my business, and then I had an afternoon to kill before heading on to the next stop. It was the dog days, hot and humid. So I went into this bar with my sales bag to get some cool air and a ginger beer. I don't drink the hard stuff anymore. I'm an AA'er. But I got to talking to this skinny fella who was sitting on the stool next to me. I'll never forget his name. It was Hippolyte Dagobert with a silent T at the end, as he was quick to point out. Not one of those trash Dagoberts over to the other side of the Zora. Well, he finished his beer and I offered to buy him another. I like to be friendly in a bar. He never did buy me a beer back, but that's okay. Like I said, I don't go for the fermented stuff these days. Not since I lost my desk job at home office and had to go back on the road. The conversation was interesting. We talked about this and that, though to be honest, he didn't talk a whole lot. Mostly just listened to me at first. I like to talk. That's my business, and I'm good at it. At one point, though, he looked down at my satchel and asked me my occupation. I told him I was in ladies' undergarments. He kind of blinked a few times, and I could see he didn't get the joke. I explained that I sold ladies' undergarments, girdles and whatnots, for the beautification of the discriminating lady and the enjoyment of her husband, and that got a chuckle out of him. Good one, he said. Never heard that before. So old Hippolyte opened up a little bit after that, and the conversation positively flowed. I asked Hippolyte if he was married. I asked because there was a little heart tattooed on his wedding ring finger. No ring, just a tattoo. And that made me curious. And Hippolyte shook his head. No. I got a soulmate, though, he said to me. Then he started telling me about Alzafine, who he said everybody around there called sweet cousin, but not him. He thought that was undignified. How she was a purty redhead who wore these purty cotton dresses, and how he loved her. Loved her for 15 years now, ever since he first laid eyes on her. Hippolyte became positively loquacious on the subject. But the funniest thing, it turns out, he'd never actually exchanged words with Alzafine, not a one. Just would see her sometimes at the sundry store when he'd go in there once a month to drop off his wooden Jesuses. Oh, I forgot to tell you. That's what Hippolyte did to get by on. He carved up old tree stumps he'd find around the swamp into figures of the Lord. Sell them to salesmen like me coming through town. Lots of us are AA'ers, and it's nice to have a little Jesus to carry around with you from stop to stop for when the nights get long and by golly, you want that drink. Anyway, like I said, Hippolyte would just kind of look at the floor whenever he'd seen Alzafine in that sundry store. Couldn't get any words out. One time, though, he got a hole in his breeches and went in there to buy a safety pin. And there was Alzafine. And there was Hippolyte with this hole in his breeches. You could have heard a pin drop. Well, actually, you did, because Hippolyte was so embarrassed he froze, don't you know, and dropped the safety pin. And before he could unfreeze himself, Alzafine bent down and picked it up, handed it to him, and nodded her head, all gentle-like. And Hippolyte knew right then and there, from the touch of her fingers on his palm, that Alzafine would be his soulmate forever and ever. That's when he went home and carved the heart onto his ring finger with that safety pin. Well, that sure touched this old salesman's heart, I can tell you. But there's more. Hippolyte told me that every evening after he fixed himself some supper and then tied the dogs down for the night, he'd sit on his porch that looked to the swamp and write a song using an old squeeze box he said his great-granddaddy used to play at the request of Bonaparte himself back when his granddaddy was in the Napoleonic Wars. Now, I don't believe they had accordions back in those days, but every family has its stories, so I didn't question. So every night for the past 15 years, Hippolyte had fashioned a song a night for Alzafine. He called them his expression songs because they expressed everything that was in his heart of hearts. He thought if maybe he wrote enough of them and sang enough of them into the night, Maybe some night one of them might float through the air across the swamp and into Alzaphine's dreams. And then she'd know he was her soulmate. I told Hippolyte that I sure would like to hear one of those songs of his. He said his squeeze box was back to the house, though, and he could only sing for Alzaphine anyway. But I'm a salesman, a darn good one, as I said. I can persuade. And I always carry a handful of little novelty harmonicas in my coat pocket. Sometimes when the lady of the house isn't interested in my undergarments, another joke there, well, I pull out one of these little novelty harps and pass them out to her children. No charge, mind you, but it often breaks the ice, and I end up getting a sale out of it anyway. Over the years, I'll often play it a little myself when driving from stop to stop. Breaks the monotony and helps keep me from falling asleep at the wheel. Oh, they're just toys. But I've gotten so I can vocalize more than a few snappy tunes with it. So the deal I made with Hippolyte was that he could sing me one of his expression songs, and I'd noodle away with my harmonica in accompaniment. He thought for a long minute, and then, so softly, I could hardly hear him, even though we were the only two people in the establishment at that time of the afternoon, started to sing. Oh, it was a nice voice. Nothing fancy, but a nice voice. He sang, "Alzaphine, my Alzaphine, sweet pickled pig lips of the bayou. Take this token of love, my heart of no cash value. But it's good, real good. My love for you is real good. Like burnt coffee scraped from the pot. My love for you is real good. Oh, Alzaphine, my Alzaphine, sweeter than turtle musk in my muscatel wine. Take this hand of mine, and I'll be thine, of no cash value. But it's good, real good. My love for you is real good. Like a rat drifting in the swamp, my love for you is real good. Well, that's kind of a short one, Hippolyte said when he was finished. I got longer ones. I was going to ask him for one of the long ones, but then I noticed that the barkeep was giving me the hairy eyeball. I'd only had that one sassafras, and even though they're non-spiritual, as I get a kick out of calling them, I limit myself to one a day. I don't want to get back into the habit and disappoint the boys back at my home meeting. So I shook Hippolyte's hand and said goodbye, giving him one of my novelty harmonicas. No charge, mind you. He seemed to like that. Said he was going to write a new expression song with it that very night. That maybe Alzaphine didn't like the squeeze box. Maybe that was the problem. I walked along the sidewalk, taking my sweet time. I had a long night's drive ahead, and I was in no hurry to get back behind the wheel. And turning the corner, I bumped into a tall, skinny girl with red hair and a cotton dress coming out of the sundry shop. Good Lord on high. She was ugly as sin.